Today, we're going to talk about how to do cold calls, something that's pretty much the antithesis of everything at viral marketing I'm about. But it is nonetheless very popular. It can be done. It's very hard to do. It's actually not something I recommend to do, which I'll go into why. But if you're looking to hire people to make cold calls for you, to pass your leads or set appointments for you, I'll share some of the ins and outs for you. Does this even work? The answer is not really. The answer is not really. There's a lot of other things I'd put in place. Maybe Facebook advertising, cold email, co-marketing, seller workshops. There's probably a lot of other things I would put in place than doing this, because cold calling is like the worst. But it can work, and it's very popular in the industry. It's something that does not require a lot of thinking necessarily. It just requires a lot of just running into the wall harder and harder and harder. If you've never cold called before and you hate the idea of cold calling, and the whole idea of outbound is just like not for you, it's not for me, I would probably recommend skipping this lesson, is not even taking this path. It still works, but it's getting more and more and more difficult. And the answer rates of you have to call more and more and more people to actually get someone to actually answer the phone. You want to do cold calling to get leads. What's the next step? Well, the type of calls I like you to always start with are just listed, just sold. Basically, what that means is hopefully you have a property, or you have permission to call around someone's property, maybe in your brokerage, that's just been listed on the market, and you're calling all the neighbors around that house. Or it just sold, sold for probably a pretty good price. It's probably a good story to tell now. And you're calling all of the people who sold around the area, like maybe, in the neighborhood. You have to write the script. Okay. You have to give people a script that they're going to use to open up the phone. There's a whole bunch out there. You can go online and you can type in just listed, just sold script. They're all great. You yourself can make the calls, or hiring amazingly talented people, and they can go straight for appointments and they're going to better conversion. I'll tell you right now, it'll be very, very, very hard to scale you making these phone calls, or you hiring exceptional A-list listing agent talent to make these phone calls. Chances are you're going to lower the standard, or it's not going for the appointment. It's probably more just identifying the lead and passing the lead to you, because you won't be able to afford that level of talent with the base pay or commission split. You need to get yourself a dialer. You also need to get yourself a dialer that's not going to get you sued. So a dialer is where you're going to put all these numbers into. It's going to keep track of all the phone calls. It's going to keep track of your suppression list, which is going to be your do not call, people do not call requests. What we're going to talk about is suppressing anyone who has sued a telemarketer in the past using TCPA litigator scrubs. Now, there's a whole bunch out there. The biggest challenge with these dialers is, from a legal standpoint, is they have the capacity to auto dial, meaning you click a button and the system's making the calls for you. If the system's making the calls for you and you're not actually clicking to make the call, it's a $500 fine per cell number that system calls. The telemarketing software is not liable. It's how you use it. You can use an auto dialer, like I'll use Mojo as an example, to auto dial landlines. You can use Mojo as an example to auto dial 100% permission-based leads. But if you load up a bunch of numbers where there's been no consent, and those are cell numbers and you're calling, you can't. So you need a dialer that's compliant. And I've looked at a lot of them. There's really only two out there that I could find. The first one's a big one. And this is what the big companies use. It's called Five9, Five, and then letter 9. So Ren Jones, that runs Vulcan 7, Vulcan 7. He's been talking to me, and he's very understanding of what's going on in the industry with regard to cold calling. And he's made his dialer very compliant. There's a requirement that you have written procedures of what do you do when someone says, take me off your list? Are your scripts compliant with do not call laws? The point is, you can go online and put together some type of procedures that shows, like, I'm actually going to try to do this legally. You need to change your caller ID every week. The last thing you need is, man, Frank, my answer rates are going way down. I must have bad data. Nope. It's because your caller ID number is going as potential spam. Make sure you use a local city. This is really important. So how do you get a phone number? You got to go to a service like Number Barn. Okay. You also need to pay attention to your nurtures. And a really great way to build your nurture list is through cold calling, because not a lot of people you talk to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you cold called me right now. I was thinking about selling my home right now. Why don't you come on over? Said no one ever. Right? So it's more of a nurture. So you put those people on your list and you stay in touch with them. So if you don't want to do all this, this is exhausting to you, you hire a sales manager that knows how to do all this. And those services are available for you out there. Phoneanimal.com or one of those companies. Highly recommended.